Tonight, one of, if not the worst video game adaptation ever made, and a detailed description of why this movie sucks.
Welcome back to Super Origami Universe. And today, we have another rant in place for you guys. And it's a movie that not only has the same director as Food Fight, but also came out the same year as Batman and Robin. The film that I will be discussing today is none other than my most hated film of all time, Mortal Kombat Annihilation. This movie is several things. Good is not one of them. Now before I start with the actual review, we will be splitting this video into several sections. The special effects and costumes, the fight scenes, the acting, the story, and the characters. And believe me when I say I don't have anything positive to say about any of these categories. But if you happen to like this movie, or at least see it as guilty pleasure, then that's great and I can respect that. But I don't like this film at all. With that said, let's get started on the reason you're here. Mortal Kombat Annihilation, the lowest point of the Mortal Kombat franchise. I'm gonna be blunt here. The effects on display here are terrible, even for the time. Seriously, Batman and Robin, which came out in the same year, looks significantly better than this. Now, I could excuse this if the movie had a smaller budget, but the film that came before it, specifically Mortal Kombat in 1995, had a smaller budget and looked a lot less cheap. I guess they blew the budget on the bad CGI and telling the actors to give out the most corny performances possible. Now, as for the designs of the characters, most of them are boring at best and look fake at worst. Baraka's design in particular looks like it was thrown together at Spirit Halloween. Seriously, even the Mortal Kombat 2 arcade sprites look more realistic than this rubber mask and plastic blade combo. And the animalities with Liu Kang and Shao Kahn look both absolutely horrendous, like the CGI models were ripped out of a bad episode of Beast Wars. And sure, the 1995 film doesn't have the best costumes and effects either, but they did to a tad better, and the fact that they did at least okay with a lower budget is impressive. Especially with Shang Tsung's iconic trench coat, which was made into one of the costumes that came with the character in Mortal Kombat 11. However, compared to some of the other stuff in this movie, the bad effects and mediocre at best costumes are the least of this movie's problems. The fight scenes consist mostly of characters flipping through the air. Heck, they do lots of flipping even outside the fight scenes for no reason at all. This just means they put no thought into the choreography of the fights, and pretty much all the fights are fist fights. I get that the 1995 film mostly resorted to hand-to-hand combat as well, but at least they used more of the characters' abilities and techniques in the scenes. Here though, for the most part, it's just poorly choreographed fist fights. Heck, there's one scene where Sonya and Melina fight in the mud for no reason other than we need to have two women fight in a mud pit because wink wink nudge nudge. Man, the 90s were a different time. And then there's the final fight. The animalities are just about on par with a kid slapping his dollar store action figures together. And the actual fight against Shao Kahn is lame. Between hits clearly not landing, the random shots of the onlookers doing heck at all, and the horrendous audio mixing, I can barely sit through it. Not to mention that his death, when compared to Shang Tsung's, is less impactful. Heck, in the games when Shao Kahn died, he exploded. But here, a weird bug dragon thing rips itself out of his body and vanishes. And as ridiculous as it sounds, it isn't even the first time that this happened in the movie. Both Cyrax and Melina end up dying in the exact same way. In a movie with the phrase Mortal Kombat in it, simply slapping on copy-paste deaths is just lazy. Oh, and despite the fact that this is a Mortal Kombat movie, the finishers aren't on the same ballpark that the series was known for. Even for its time. Come on, show us why the ESRB was made. Anyways, while the first movie, which I want to reiterate, does everything this one does, but better, suffers from similar issues, it doesn't skimp out on the raw savagery that the games were made infamous by. Such as when Sub-Zero straight up freezes the guy and shatters him into pieces, or when Scorpion's skull gets sliced in half before his whole body explodes. Even Shang Tsung has a decently brutal death in the first movie, killed by falling into one of the iconic spike pits from the games and reduced to a skeleton as life fades from his body. That's the sort of unfiltered 90s edge and violence I'd want out of a Mortal Kombat film. But for now, let's move on to the next point before we get sidetracked. Fun fact, the only two actors who returned from the previous movie are Robin Shou as Liu Kang and Talisa Soto as Kitana. Literally all of the returning characters from the first movie, aside from those two, have been recast. With Raiden's actor Christopher Lambert in particular, it was because he knew the movie would be garbage, so he didn't want to be a part of it. And let's just say that the performances of the replacing actors in this movie don't hold a candle to the original cast. Most of the actors feel like they were barely even trying and didn't actually want to be there. The standout bad performances easily go to Brian Thompson's performance as Shao Kahn and Lucetta Vander as Sindel.
Too bad you will die.
As long as the portal remains open, your world becomes my world!
I guess they really needed those paychecks. Either way, these particular performances alone drag this movie down by a lot, only made laughably worse by the other actors' performances being generic at best. Almost every character is either bland or some outdated stereotype, even by the measures of the time. And they're all forgettable thanks to the cast, and probably also the writers phoning the whole production. And don't worry, we'll talk about the characters later. In fact, let's just say that the characters are the worst part of the film. This movie is a combination of the stories of Mortal Kombat 3 and 4, though leaning more towards MK3. Shao Kahn, with Shinnok's help, decides to invade Earthrealm and merge the realms, despite his forces losing the 10th tournament in the events of the first film. Wait, isn't there supposed to be a rule against that? And aren't the Elder Gods supposed to enforce those rules? Oh wait, the Elder Gods do know about this. So, what do?
Absolutely nothing!
This is just lazy storytelling at its finest. At least in the game, Shao Kahn used loopholes in the rules in his attempt to conquer Earthrealm. Showing off that his might as a conqueror doesn't only come from his muscles, but his mind as well. Meanwhile, in the movie, Shao Kahn just straight up breaks the rules and he gets away with it up until the climax, all because Shinnok is the one who's allowing it. Even though the other Elder Gods are shown to be capable of stopping Shinnok at this point, they don't do it until the end of the film. I guess just like in the games, the Elder Gods are completely useless. This is all not to mention Liu Kang's plotline with needing to find his animality in order to fight Shao Kahn, having very little plot relevance. It's only really there so they can bring in the atrocious CGI models of Liu Kang's poorly rendered dragon form and Shao Kahn's ugly looking Hydra form in an attempt to convince the watchers that they actually did play the games. Oh, and while we're throwing around useless plot threads, let's talk about Jackson's arms. Despite supposedly being some kind of upgrade, he ends up being perfectly fine without them while fighting Motaro, even though he was getting wrecked with them. That kind of inconsistency drives me up a wall. Speaking of, the most egregious example goes to Scorpion. Why is he even in this movie? He's supposed to have died in the previous film. Well, the real answer is from marketability, but that's not satisfying with the narrative, at least with the equally useless Sub-Zero, who was explained that it was the original Sub-Zero's brother. I get that Scorpion is the icon of the series, but this is ridiculous. It's almost like they decided that another portion of the budget would be blown on pointless characters that serve to pad out the cast. Oh, and a majority of the characters in this film serve little to no purpose to the story, and with that... like I said earlier, the characters are easily the worst part of this atrocity. Although, to be fair, most of them aren't that awful. Some of them are either just plain boring or serve no purpose to the plot. So, for the sake of making sure this rant doesn't drag on any more than it has, we will only talk about the characters that actually do get on my nerves. Starting with James Remar as Raiden. For most of the film, he's sidelined up until he becomes mortal due to the Elder Gods deciding to yank Raiden's immortality away. For some reason, he's pretty much becoming a liability to the heroes, despite the fact that he shows some martial arts skills, despite the fact that he was reduced to immortal. But no two random goons are fully capable of giving Raiden trouble. At least in Mortal Kombat Legends Battle of the Realms, when Raiden fought Reiko, it was an established character and was giving Raiden a hard time instead of some random no-names. Not to mention, he gets one-shotted by Shao Kahn in his mortal form. This just makes him look overly weak for no reason. And once again, in Battle of the Realms, while Raiden does end up getting wrecked by Shao Kahn, he at least goes down fighting. Overall, Raiden sucks in this movie, but as bad as he is, the other characters we're about to mention are even worse. Next we have Irina Pentiva as Jade. She only has one problem in this film, but this problem is a major one. She is revealed in this version of the movie to be one of Shao Kahn's spies, which is not in line with Jade's character at all. In fact, this sounds like something the OG timeline version of Tanya would do, since Tanya in the first Mortal Kombat timeline is infamous for betrayal and backstabbing. Jade, on the other hand, is known for being loyal to Kitana and wouldn't betray her for anything. So, long story short, Jade's character was butchered in this movie. Now we get to the third worst character in the movie, Masuta Vander as Sindel. Her lines are pure cringe and makes every single scene with her unbearable to watch.
Too bad you will die.
Bro, you just got it cringe.
It doesn't help matters that her actual character is practically non-existent. In fact, one could even see her as a worse version of Mr. Freeze from Batman and Robin, since at least Mr. Freeze has something beyond just saying his ice puns. Sindel's entire character is just saying cringy one-liners. Our second to last character is Rainer Shone as Shinnok. This guy not only looks or sounds nothing like Shinnok, but his character is essentially reduced to the abusive father cliche. In the game, Shinnok is actually seen as a threat. Even when he does get disrespected by characters like Johnny and Cassie Cage, he's still at the very least shown to be a somewhat intimidating character. Heck, in the new mobile game Mortal Kombat Onslaught, Shinnok ends up being a credible threat once again. This version lacks any of that and is not an active threat. Even when he decides to do something, he gets stopped when the Elder Gods finally decide to wake up and do something. So overall, he's merely a cheap imitation of the original Shinnok. But in terms of the character, he's little more than just the abusive father cliche. And now, I've saved the worst for last. Brian Thompson as Shao Kahn. Okay, this guy has just about all the problems I've listed with the previous characters, and a few others. For starters, as mentioned earlier in the acting section, his performance is abysmal, and sometimes he even sounds like the actor is about to burst into tears. Now, maybe that could have worked if the writers really bothered to explore the roots of the abuse between Shao Kahn and Shinnok, but that requires some tact and talent. Next, he barely looks like the character. That's even when Shao wears the character's iconic helmet, which he only has on for 3 scenes in the film, and even then, for the second scene, he doesn't even have the skull mask. And then he takes the helmet and mask off too quickly in the 3rd scene. And throughout most of the film, he's sometimes wearing other outfits that look nothing like what Shao Kahn has worn in the games before, or since. Next, there's the fact that Shao Kahn's personality is an insult to the Shao Kahn in the games. In said games, Shao Kahn is a ruthless and intimidating 7-foot-tall warmonger who would crush you without a second thought and laugh about it. He also lacks anything that would make you sympathize with him, again, looking at that botched abuse dynamic. And he doesn't take orders from anyone. In the movie, he's nowhere near as physically intimidating, and there are scenes where he's supposedly played for sympathy due to Shinnok being an abusive father. That's the problem right there. I'm okay with sympathetic villains, but only when done right. This just feels forced and tacked on, and as a result, this is very insulting to real abuse victims out there. There's a time and a place to try and tackle subjects like this. Mortal Kombat Annihilation is neither of those. And finally, Shao Kahn's reliance on Shinnok for his plans to work makes him seem incompetent, which you shouldn't feel about an interdimensional military juggernaut. To sum everything up, MK Annihilation Shao Kahn is poorly acted, poorly designed, and poorly written. They got just about everything wrong, and he's overall a bad adaptation from one of the best villains in gaming history. And for all of those reasons, he is not only my most despised villain of all time, but one of my most hated characters of all time. Now it's time for the final verdict. Alright, final verdict. Out of all the trash I've seen in media, this is among the worst. Really, only surpassed by something like the shit show known as Velma. Well, now I guess there's only one thing left to do.
Release the demon!
Arise, my messengers of death. Our time has arrived.
Drown in darkness!
No survivors!
Well, now that this is all taken care of, next month will be the rant you've all been waiting for. Despite the fact that some of the planned cast for the video has been changed a lot, regardless, we plan to release the Velma rant sometime in July. Which is why we need you to help us out. If you are at least decent in editing, you may join our community on Discord, so that we can not only finish this as soon as possible, but we can make other projects more effectively on Aster's channel as well. That said, see you soon.